You got it.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the November general meeting for Solidarity Lowell. Just a few guidelines before we begin. This is, excuse me, this is a hybrid meeting, so please bear with us. This meeting is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel. By staying in the meeting, you agree to be recorded. To speak in person, please raise your hand. And on Zoom, please use the raise hand action or type an asterisk into the chat. Our timekeeper today is Dee Halzak. Please be mindful of time limits. And our stacker is Joe Boyle. Please remember, just step up, step back. If you're speaking a lot, step back. If you are not speaking, please step up. We want to hear from everybody. Assume positive intentions and please speak slowly. There is a stink bug on my laptop. Okay, dealt with that. All right, our agenda. Brief attendee intros, land acknowledgement. We're a little behind, but we'll get through it. Introduction about Solidarity Lowell, news and committee updates, allied organizations updates, and then we'll discuss election results with a presentation by Ron Peastreet, and we'll wrap up around 7-ish. Okay, so we'll start with introductions. I will call on you. Please give your name, your pronouns, where you live, and what is your favorite Thanksgiving dish. So, Amy, why don't you start?
Okay. Amy Baranowski, pronouns are she, her. I live in District 4, the acre/downtown district. My favorite dish would have to be stuffing, veggie stuffing.
Brian?
My name is Ryan Hammond. My pronouns are he, his. I live in the acre with Amy, and my favorite Thanksgiving dish would be mashed potatoes with the skins left in, and you put in some garlic and chives and butter with them.
Yeah.
I wholly endorse that.
Wait for Paul to sit down before I call on him.
My turn.
Yes.
Paul Gaudette, he, him. I live in the Highlands of Lowell. My favorite Thanksgiving dish is green bean casserole.
All right.
John?
John Grossman, he, him, Pawtucketville. I like cranberry sauce.
But wait, is it the natural one or is it one from the can?
The former.
Joe?
I'm Joe Boyle. I live in the Highlands. He, him. I'm on the SL coordinating committee, and I would say my favorite Thanksgiving food is probably deviled eggs.
No one's surprised. No one's surprised. Would you like to go next?
Dan O'Connor. I'm a Dracut resident right up the street here, and I guess my favorite would be the desserts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Mitchell?
My name is Mitchell Pollen. Him, I live in the acre of Lowell. Favorite Thanksgiving dish probably have to be Canadian meat stuffing.
Chris?
Chris Ackerman, she, her, hers, live in downtown Lowell. Thanksgiving dish. It has to be pies of any kind, and I'd probably go with pumpkin.
Dee?
Dee Halzak, pronouns are she, her. I live in the acre. My favorite Thanksgiving dish would be homemade cranberry sauce made with honey.
Ron?
Ron Peastreet, I live in Centerville. He, his, him. And it's a tie. My mother makes both the best stuffing and the best pumpkin pie that and she uses Native American ingredients in both, so I'm not going to choose between the two.
Okay, our online folks, Caroline.
Hi everybody, Caroline Snow, she, her. I live in Centerville, District 4, and my favorite Thanksgiving dish is homemade mashed potatoes, and they don't have to have anything in them, just potatoes.
Nice. I'm Marissa DuPont. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I live in South Lowell, and my favorite Thanksgiving dish, I think, is like a squash casserole. I've had some like that are really. My mom makes some really good stuff. It's all the stuff my mom makes is great. Okay, so we'll start with our land acknowledgement. Here on 10 Arlington Street in Dracut, we stand on the land of the following local nations: Wabanaki, the Dawnland Confederacy, Pennacook, Pentucket, Pawtucket, and Agawam. And that information is from nativeland.ca. And Ron Peastree has some thoughts about Thanksgiving that he'd like to share.
I was asked to do this because, well, it's half my ancestry. Trying to find a quick, pithy way to talk about this if you're Native American is really not easy. The traditional narrative that we hear in white America, we all know there was a bunch of happy settlers that had a nice year and they had a big harvest and they held a dinner and a bunch of indigenous Indians showed up, and sometimes they're a small number of happy ones and sometimes they're a small number of unfortunate ones that the pilgrims have given them their largesse, and that's the Disney version. And the truth is extremely more complicated than that, and not at all. You could write a whole series of TV shows about this. The first thing is the pilgrims were refugees, religious refugees. They had gotten after Henry VIII decided that he didn't like having to listen to the Pope anymore, and he's founded his own church. Some of the English populace didn't like that. Some of those people thought they couldn't stay within the church under those circumstances. The word pilgrim and Puritan are both things that came in the 1800s. Originally, these people called themselves separatists because they were separating from the Anglican Church. And in a piece of horrible English Civil War history we won't go into here, they were the subject of every bit as much nasty persecution as any other group that's on the low end of the short end of the stick. So they fled to the Netherlands, and about 1/5 of them were religious fanatics who then proceeded to try and convert all the people in the Netherlands over to their, and the government of the Netherlands was actually pretty easygoing. Anybody who knows anything about Amsterdam, even in modern times, knows how easygoing they are. Said, hey guys, you guys are a little too intense for us. Either tone it down or leave. And the extremist ones went, well, we're leaving. And they went and they got themselves 2 boats, because there were 2 boats, the Mayflower and the Speedwell, I think his name was. Then they proceeded. The Speedwell was the passenger boat, and there was supposed to be about 200 of them that were supposed to go. Speedwell developed a leak before it left dock. They fixed it. They got 200 miles out to sea, and the dock and the leak came back worse. So they emergency come back. Then they're stuck in the docks for a month. All of them living inside of the Mayflower, the ones that are left over. So they're going through their food and their supplies and all this other fun stuff. And the Mayflower is a cargo ship, not designed to hold those people. They're starting to run out of weather. They go on over. They run out of food halfway through. They are supposed to go to Virginia. They end up in Plymouth, Massachusetts. That's a slight navigation error. And when they got there, there was 130 people on board who were dying of a combination of scurvy, typhus, and starvation. And they hadn't any experience with New England. They got here in December, and so there was no way they were growing crops or doing anything else. They never left the boats. They stayed there for that whole summer. Half the people on that boat died during winter, and all of them would have died if it wasn't for the fact that they first got some supplies that they found, and then the Wampanoag found them, and the Wampanoag went, you can get out of the boat. And they went, no, we're too scared. And so they delivered food to them, and they lived through the winter. And then they got off the boat in March of 1621, the 53 of them that were still alive. And then they proceeded to try and do things. And the land they were on used to belong to the Pawtucket, who had all been wiped out by any of the dozen of diseases that the Europeans had brought over, starting with Christopher Columbus. One person had lived out of that thing. And the only reason he lived because he was in Europe learning how to speak English. We call him Squanto now. And he turned out to be the interpreter and the ambassador between the Wampanoag and them. And he knew the land because it was his family's land. So he showed them how to farm. And Massasoit, which by the way is a title, not the guy's name, but we all learned him as, proceeded to give them food, teach them how to grow corn, teach them how to grow beans, and so for the first like 5 years, less each year, but certainly for that very first year, if it hadn't been for all the help they got from the Native Americans, they wouldn't have survived. And the interesting question is, why Massasoit helped these people? The boats were really impressive, the technology was really impressive, and the Pawtucket were an important ally in balancing out the power between the Wampanoag and the Narragansett. And so when they lost the Pawtucket, they were worrying because of disease and other things that the Narragansett would wipe them out if they come down to an arms deal. So this wasn't, altruism, fairy angel stuff this was practical politics. He wanted an ally that would help him out. And that first Thanksgiving, there were 50 people from Europe and more than 90 Wampanoag warriors who provided most of the food. And it was a 3-day celebration, not a single. So the truth is a lot more complicated. And the reasons behind the truth are also a lot more complicated. Everybody had interests at that table. And 50 years later, Massasoit's second son met a comet who we know by a different name, Philip. King Philip. King Philip was Massasoit's second son. His eldest son inherited and then died under mysterious circumstances, which Metacomet always blamed on the settlers. And that set the stage for King Philip's War, which the long and short of it is, out of those 53 people who survived that first year, more than 10% of the American population is descended from them. More than 35 million Americans are descended from those. And the Wampanoag, the Pawtucket, the Narragansett, all those Native American people you're talking about, they are almost completely wiped out. They don't exist anymore. So the thing I would like to ask people is, don't judge people by their name, their history, their color of the skin, what they say, what they do, and the results of what they say and what they do. That's the true story for Thanksgiving meetings, that we should be actually judging people on who they crudely are and nothing else. Sorry if that was long.
No, that's That's what was the fourth version.
Okay. It feels weird to transition, but here we go. Solidarity Lowell is a volunteer-based group of community members of Greater Lowell working towards social justice by defending the human rights, dignity, and equality of all against hate and discrimination. We welcome new members. And the coordinating committee, please raise your hands, is your elected team of volunteers running the meetings, organizing events, disseminating relevant news, and sharing calls to action. Coordinating committee elections will be held in April, but if you're interested in joining, please contact us after the meeting to learn more, or you can email us at contact@solidaritylowell.com. We are a chapter of Progressive Massachusetts, which is a statewide, member-driven grassroots organization committed to fighting for a vision of shared prosperity, racial and social justice, good government, and environmental sustainability in Massachusetts. And you can learn more at their website. Okay, so now we would like to celebrate the happy things that have happened this month. So first, and thanks to Dee for putting this together. Dee, do you want to read this or should I?
You better.
Okay. All right, hold on, move this. Okay. 2 of our endorsees were reelected. We look forward to 2 more years with Bez Noon and Wayne Jeanette on the city council. Governor Healy signed the no-cost calls bill. Free calls, video visits, and email between the incarcerated and their loved ones takes effect on December 1st. Deshaun Washington, a 4th grade teacher at Maria Hastings Elementary School in Lexington, is the first Black man to be named Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. Kimberly Dowdell is the first Black woman to become president of the American Institute of Architects. Supreme Court issued an ethics code for themselves. It's not perfect, but it's a start.
Oh, yeah.
Gabe Amo won Rhode Island's 1st congressional district seat Tuesday, becoming the state's first Black candidate elected to Congress. Ohio voters voted to amend their constitution to protect abortion rights. Philadelphia voters elected their first female mayor. And Yusuf Salam, one of the exonerated Central Park 5, won his election to the New York City Council.
Wow.
Who else has anything positive they'd like to share? Ron.
We are this close to having a 5-day ceasefire for the purpose of removing all non-combatants from the Gaza Strip.
Excellent.
Got some connections there. They want
Chris?
to know that.
Yes, Nicole McLean, who was one of our presenters, I want to say about 2 years ago, she gave a presentation about Juneteenth. I forget who had made, I think Jacqueline had made the connection with her. Nicole lives in Lynn, and I've been connecting Nicole with people I know in Lynn. Anyways, she just got elected as the first Black American woman councillor at large in Lynn.
Yeah. Pull that off in a minute, yeah.
I wanted to point out that one of the finalists for Massachusetts Teacher of the Year was a history teacher from Lowell High School. My daughter has had her, and she was one of the reasons that my daughter is so woke today.
That's awesome.
The Lowell history, the social studies department is all right.
That's great. Any other positive things? One positive thing I would like to say is, Susie was the closest to beating the incumbent out of all the people who were challenging in the city council race. And I think that's a big thing.
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Okay, you can always join Solidarity Lowell Upbeat for more positive things on Facebook. All right, elections committee. Okay, so next year, our focus is going to be on registering people to vote and getting out the vote, because Donald Trump won in part because not enough people registered to vote. And when progressives don't register and don't vote, they don't win. And we need to stop Donald. So we're looking for anybody who wants to help with that effort. Chris?
Sorry. Yes, Progressive Mass always encourages us to at least once a year, if not more often, meet with our state reps to go over a list of progressive legislature that they are watching and that they are in favor of. And I was finally able to get a date from Vanna Howard. And it is this coming Friday, November 24th, because I asked her to get us a date, if possible, after hours, so that people who work can attend. So it's Friday, November 24th at 6 p.m. at Root Awakening, 61 Market Street. The first main item, of course, on the agenda, even though we're sure she's aware of it, but we are going to bring it up anyways, is whatever she can do at a state level to help with the housing and homelessness crisis in Lowell. I'm sure she's doing things, but we just want to hear it from her, and if possible, bring our ideas to her or our requests of what else she might want to consider doing. Then secondly, there's a short list of pending legislation because she, as in previous years, has already co-sponsored most of the legislation that we were interested in. So there's a very few items left, which we will then go over. And that includes protecting revenue from the Fair Share Amendment, which several of us went out canvassing for. Climate change, adapting infrastructure, living wage, and a few others. It would be good if it wasn't just me meeting with her there, because I might as well meet with her, and she lives in the building next to me, so we can just meet outside our front doors. We don't have to go to Brood. It would be really nice if other people would show, even if you're not her constituent at this point of the game. Since she made an effort to give us a after hours meeting, we should make an effort to show up. Yeah. So please, anybody that could possibly show up, show up. Ruth will accommodate us. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, I'm willing to bet she's the only state rep in the state who would set up a constituency meeting the day after Thanksgiving. Second of all, that might be a reason I might not be able to be there, but if I can be there, I will. What's the climate change bill that you have in mind? If we have met with her about
Okay,
250 Mass
if
Pilot.
you had already met with her about, hang on,
But I
I
don't
wrote
know
it
which one
down
you're talking
here.
about.
Yes, here we are. The climate change bill was,
This is
Come
from
on.
Progressive Mass,
yes, the
That-
hero bill.
the Hero Bill. I believe she has co-sponsored that, but I'll
Yeah,
confirm. that.
last I checked, I didn't see it, but it might have happened and I didn't see
Maybe
it.
not. Yeah, I'll check.
It's H 2894.
Yeah, I'm afraid that the governor has more or less short circuited that, but anyway. no
Right,
offense,
that
don't worry
I
about
just went by the list that Progressive Mass had put out, and those were the ones that her name was not yet on.
it. Okay,
So I figured we'll just bring it up, and I'm sure she has valid reasons why she didn't, but we'll just bring it up.
Yeah.
As time allows, the first and most important issue I think we should spend more time on is the housing
I
situation.
agree.
Yeah. Big time. Okay. You good, Chris?
I'm good.
Okay.
Unless anybody else has a question?
Okay, any other questions? Okay. So the Merrimack Valley Interfaith Sanctuary Network, I am the volunteer coordinator. And we are looking for support for an asylum seeker. Her name is Lillian. She's from the Dominican Republic and will hopefully be moving to a more permanent apartment soon. Yeah. She just asked me to do a reference letter for her, so I'm really hoping that she gets in. It's due like in December, so I'm pretty sure she wouldn't be moving until January, but
How did you find an apartment?
she found it. So
Amazing.
she's on top of everything. She's like,
Great.
we don't have to worry about her. Like, she's good. But I mean, she's got a good head on her shoulders. So she needs help otherwise. But yeah, apparently there's an apartment complex called River Place that accepts low income folks. You just have to apply and there's a process and stuff. And
Great.
it's just taken a long time. So fingers crossed.
Mm.
Yeah, so donations and gift cards are appreciated and you can give those to me, I'll pass them along. Or you can donate via Cash App, again, via me, and I will pass it along to her. For checks, cash donations, or gift cards, just email marissa@solidaritylowell.com and we'll coordinate drop off.
Where is that?
Yes,
Donations and gift cards. Maybe for our Christmas party, we could make it a topic to ask people to bring gift cards. At
oh
the
yeah, that'd be
Christmas
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm
something.
sure she's gonna need help furnishing because she's just
Yes.
been living in a room, and so this will be an actual apartment, so. I
Right,
bet she'll need, I know she has some cooking stuff, but I think she needs more and. You know, she can always use stuff for the baby. The baby's getting
I'm sure
big.
she's gonna have needs. I was just thinking the Christmas party.
Yeah,
Gifts, gift cards.
yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Connected.
If there's a wish list, maybe we could go through our houses and,
Yeah, I'll have her put something together.
need
Yes,
towels or something.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
awesome.
plenty.
Mm.
Bed sheets, I have more than I ever know what to do with it.
Yeah, I know she has like an inflatable mattress thing, so it's easy to move, but I'm assuming she's gonna wanna get like a real bed at some point. so-
Well, ask her for a wish list.
Yeah.
Those are the
Each
answers
some
that
of us
I
have
threw
that
back.
stuff standing around.
Okay, the Unpacking Whiteness Dialogue Group, it's designed to explore racial biases, white supremacy, white privilege, explicit and implicit bias, systemic racism, and microaggressions. These are supportive, structured dialogues. There are 5 sessions, 1 per week, and it's capped at 10 people, so it's a small group. And after attending the dialogue group, attendees are invited to the ongoing group, which meets once a month and alternates between discussing a book or watching a film. Then you can sign up at the bit.ly link there. Or if you have questions, just email me, marissa@solidaritylowell.com. Okay, allied groups and announcements. Please share any important information and upcoming events from other groups that you are involved in.
This isn't so much an event as a request. The people who are dealing with homelessness and the unhoused in the city have been asking if people have space heaters, if people have luggage, duffel bags, anything, because one of the things that happens during the sweeps is if they don't have a nice place to keep everything, stuff gets lost. So they're trying to give every single group of people all the things that they can at least have their important personal stuff in one container. So if they get swept, they can pick it up and go. So
That's another thing, like, I mean, would that be the same list that Dee's been putting in the rapid response update? Okay, so maybe that's another thing to bring to the holiday party. You know, if anyone has any of those items. Caroline?
Everybody. So I think most of us understand that District 4 within the city council maps and the school committee maps is wonky. So I have been in contact and conversation with Wayne Janess, who is the city councilor currently, and I am going to be putting together a District 4 collaborative. So that'll be a collaborative between all 5 of the neighborhoods per the map. You know, there's discussion about which actual neighborhoods match. But District 4 is the only one that crosses the river and there's a whole bunch of ways that make it really unique. And that has been used as a reason for both city council and voters to not be as engaged. So, you know, we have this new map and now we need a new way of thinking about it, and neighborhood groups just aren't working anymore. They're great on their own, but we need another level up. And so I'll be starting that in 2024. And if you know anybody that's in District 4, feel free to let me know. And I'll be putting stuff on Facebook as sort of the point of contact. And we're going to be doing mostly Zoom meetings, just because of traffic and crossing the river. And so we'll be doing mostly Zoom, but I'm hoping for a meet and greet in the summer.
Caroline, you should just put together a blurb and send it to Dee. She can put it in a rapid response update.
Perfect.
Anyone else? John?
The coalition of climate activist groups working on legislation is called Mass Power Forward. 350 Mass is part of that. They're planning a lobby day on December 5th. They're trying to do it in a way so that you don't have to go to the State House. They're asking groups to set up meetings with legislators locally, just like we have with Representative Howard. And I'm trying to get one set up with Senator Kennedy. And if I succeed, I'll let y'all know. If I don't succeed, I'll be real pissed. So that's a Tuesday, December 5th. Yeah, but the meeting might be on or around December 5th. Okay, that's beyond it. But so and this will be about some of the key climate legislation and Mass Power Forward is supporting, much of which is endorsed by the government.
Send me something for the newsletter.
Well, if I don't have a date.
I don't know who was first, Paul or Dee.
So anybody who's sending stuff into the RRT newsletter, the deadline is Monday at the latest. I think this week it's actually Sunday because we have to get it out early because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so I would say Sunday night is probably the safest.
You mean today?
Today.
Like now, right
In a
now.
couple hours.
I put it together and then tomorrow it goes live. After Amy checks it.
Yeah.
Merrimack Valley Project, as you know, we're still looking for a lead organizer, because of the untimely death of Vic Cornell, came to us from Texas. But we did have elections and we have a new slate of officers who take charge on 1st of January. Lisa Arnold, who you all know well, is now first vice president and in charge of personnel. Myself, I'm going to be the president, and our new secretary is Melissa. So Solidarity Lowell has married.
Finally, you got it.
Anyone else? Thanks, Caroline. All right. Okay, so our featured topic, the election debrief. Ron is going to take this one.
All right, so first things first, I was hoping that Secretary of State's Galvin's office would have completed their number crunching, and they haven't. So I couldn't get any numbers everything that I say now is quote unquote preliminary because it hasn't been blessed by the Secretary of State. It's not considered official until
Results,
it's,
yeah.
right, exactly. Now, what that really means is that there's provisionary ballots that haven't been ruled on and other kinds of administrative things, you know, so any race where there was any danger whatsoever that we didn't know what the result was, they wouldn't have called it. So none of the results are gonna change.
Right.
Some of the percentages may change, some of the statistics underneath may change, but whatever got elected or didn't get elected, those results are gonna stand, so we don't need to worry about that. But, well, yeah, I worked the Margaret Scarsdale recount and testimony, that was a whole soap opera in and of itself. So,
God, she won.
yeah, yeah, she flipped the Republican
That's great.
over, we ended up, you know, like 7 votes or less pulling that off.
Couple,
Yeah, pepperoni and that sort of stuff. And she worked with some of us on Alexandra Chandler's campaign. She's a superhero. I was very glad when she decided to run. I threw everything I had into helping her. Anyway, this is going to get complicated because in order to understand what we're talking about, you've got to keep 3 things in your head at once. You've got to keep our new district map for the city council, our new district map for the school committee, and then the actual election results. So go back to that last one. Back in the days when we had 9 at-large people, that was the map, right? That's the way the world worked back then. All right, now flip back to the beginning for the city council map, bang, okay? So that's the world as it exists now. These are the city council districts. Everybody here knows the city of Lowell pretty well, so you know which areas represent what here. Not surprisingly, I guess I'm gonna.
green is big.
That right. The money is colored appropriately. And the lack of money is also colored appropriately. Things I've noticed, is there anyone besides myself and Joe who are involved in the elections, or precinct wardens or people who are election workers here? Okay, so some of the stuff I'm gonna talk about is from my perspective as a precinct warden, and this is my 3rd year doing this, so I've got some data, statistics. So one of the things is we only had, now switch over to the overall election report. These are, one more time. There it is. Okay, so we only had 9.9% overall participation. And this is an odd election year with nobody running in Congress. There are some towns in Massachusetts who simply refuse to run any elections in odd years because the turnout is so low and there's no point to it. And the other issue, of course, is if you look at these results, you'll see that in a lot of cases, there's only one name on the contestant ballot. So uncontested elections also tends to drive stuff down. But you'll notice that, let's see if we can see it here. Can you scroll down so we can see Belvedere?
Which one's Belvedere?
The one with the highest number next to it.
Oh, that's,
17 point something %, something like that.
I'm looking at, hold on, school committee.
Not school committee, city council, hang on,
I think it's just.
district. Yep, there it is.
It's
District 3.
yeah, it's Leahy.
Yep, District 3. That was an uncontested election. And they had 17.07% voter turnout. And that is 10% higher than some other places in the city.
Is that equal to the number of members of Mr. Leahy's extended term?
That's not information I have access to.
It's possible.
That may very well be possible. But for those of us who want to elect people who are progressive, I'll avoid using any partisan political words here. I'll just say if we want people who represent the 99%, if we want people who are progressives, we have to get people who represent that segment of society into a voting booth. And if you'll look here, Belvedere was the highest percentage, and guess where the lowest percentage of voter turnout was? And that explains the election results all by itself. Stacey Thompson and other good progressive people who were people of color or from at-risk communities didn't get elected because people who would ordinarily vote for them didn't walk into a voting booth. Now, we did 8 weeks of early voting. We sent out 2 census things. Have automatic voter registration. You interact with RMV, DMV, all sorts of other things. You automatically are registered unless you specifically say you want to vote out, opt out. And we've got no excuse mail-in ballots. The mail-in balloting was the lowest percentage of any election since we've introduced it. And that was supposed to be the silver bullet that would help people who were doing 2 minimum wage jobs and didn't have time to be in a voting booth and.
Yeah.
Right. And as a precinct warden, I'll tell you that I had less than 3% of the people who came to my precinct in any of the last 2 years were under the age of 35. When I know for darn sure the demographics of my precinct are in excess of 30% of the population is under the age of 35. So that population is misrepresented by a factor of 1 in 10, right? And then I know that the city is, depending on how you look at it, between 1/5 and 1/6 Hispanic. And oh boy, are they grossly underrepresented in the people who walk into a voting booth. So youth, not so much the Asian community. The Asian community, there's slight amounts of underrepresentation, but they tend to actually walk into a voting booth. But we, as people who care about who runs, we need to think about why these people aren't bothering, right? And so I don't want to just whine about problems. Suggestions for the under 35 people, I think we need to in our hands. One of the better ideas that I heard was that we should actually be sending out postcards that have a tear out that fits into your wallet.
Oh, for who to vote for?
To remind you to vote.
Oh, to remind you to vote.
Yeah, so you can, you put something in every time you open your, whatever, or an electronic version of one that you can put on your phone that automatically gets into your, what was that?
They don't carry wallets.
People under 35 don't
They
carry
pay with their
My
phones.
daughter makes fun of me all day long for having a wallet. so.
But then we can send the electronic version of it to their, their meeting thing. Welcome.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. That was different.
Random guy just.
I think we also need to do more explicit work to phone bank and get people. One of the things I kept hearing, people are still confused about the hybrid voting system.
Yep.
And some people think that because we used to vote for 9 people and now we only vote for 4 people and that is going to depress voter count. I don't know that I agree with them about that, but I think that that's something that we should look at. I don't want to assume anything about why we're not getting responses. I just want to say we're not getting responses. We should drill down in the places where the dip is the lowest compared to what the demographics say it should be. And we should be really open-minded and listen and find out why they're not filling in mail-out ballots, find out why. And if there's something that we can do, I want to do it. I also recognize that voter malaise is a 248-year-old problem in the history of the United States. So we're not going to solve it instantly. I suspect very strongly that when I get the numbers from Secretary Galvin's office that are official, I'm going to find out Lowell's not the only city that had this issue. That we're going to have low voter turnout all over the state. But until I have those numbers, that's an assumption on my part. What I know is that 3% of the voters under 35 are coming to my precinct when it should be 35%. What I know is that Hispanic voters are showing up at 1 in 9 or 1 in 10 compared to what they should be. What I know is that the poorest districts in the city have the lowest voter turnout. And those are all things that as people who care about who's getting elected, I think we should care about. And I now open the floor to conversation and discussion.
The first thing I would say is that this is something we have to start working on in January because the 2016 election was lost 6 months before the election because not enough people registered. And that means we have to start in January.
There's already a coalition of people called Lowell Votes that are working diligently, and they, exactly, when they had their debrief celebration dinner, it was this week, they talked about how disappointed they were, but also it would have been even lower if they hadn't worked in the neighborhoods and did all of, they did tens of thousands of phone calls and door knocks and everything else. So that coalition is Coalition for Better Acre, Lowell Health Alliance, Merrimack Valley Project, CBA, CMAA. Those folks have been working in a nonpartisan way to increase participation, essentially. And they're redoubling their efforts to say exactly what Dee was mentioning is, it has to start earlier. I mean, they did voter nights, they did voter interviews with the candidates, they did guides, they did beautiful printouts of new districts and everything else. It would have been even lower without that effort. But I wouldn't want to see Solidarity Lowell tackle this separately from those. efforts.
No,
That's not the intent.
It just,
we wanna work with
and
both folks.
it's already in coalition, it would be one more logo at the bottom of the flyer.
I want all the actors in
Solidarity
Lowell to work together on this issue.
Yeah.
I think it affects all of us.
Exactly.
And Lowell votes is their special thing, but they shouldn't have to carry the entire casket by themselves. It's too big a casket. We all gotta get on it. We all gotta be pallbearers.
There's a little bit of light in this tunnel. With such low turnout, those who vote have much more power than in a big turnout election.
Yeah, but it's all Bellevue that
You're,
votes.
you're like the rare animal that shows up, a unicorn in the booth. So, this,
But that keeps things the way they were, because that's the area that always voted, because they always had the power, because.
yeah, no, and the initial ideas that came out when we had the celebration dinner were things like, there weren't enough sandwich boards telling everybody when voting day was.
Yeah, that was meager.
So why doesn't Lowell Votes print up our own lawn signs and put them in those neighborhoods?
And advertise the
But-
mail-in voting, like, I didn't see anything advertised for that. I don't even remember getting anything to request a mail-in ballot. I had to email, what's his name at the office, and he had to send it to me. Mitch?
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was gonna comment on, was, in the 2022 state elections. We received an invitation in the mail from the secretary. The Secretary of the Commonwealth's office to vote by mail. Return this, and we received nothing from the city government this year. I know people who went through the steps because they didn't receive anything in the mail, but they took the steps to request mail-in ballots and did not receive them. At least they claim they did not receive them. And ultimately ended up voting on election day. Again, I can't verify how much of that was the case. Mail-in voting is unfortunately not going to be tremendously effective for probably non-presidential elections unless an effort is made to make it convenient for the people to get a ballot. Another thing, less than 10, just shy of 10%, obviously a dismal turnout. What was pretty stunning was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with New York City's municipal election this year, which had about 6.5% turnout.
Well, that was about the acre.
But without a mayoral election topping the ticket, New York City elections mayor every 4 years. And that was unusual, for a non-mayoral, that was unusually low for a non-mayoral year in New York City. But it was pretty, again, 6.8% is a terrible turnout number. Like you said, that was the acre turnout. So that was pretty, surprising to see. So it's just, it's hard to figure, I myself looking at this, it's hard to figure out why, turnout was so down to it's under 10%. When you look at, recent years, it was pretty reliably between 15 and 20. Even though, the cities, for better or for worse, always held its elections on odd years.
Caroline?
So a couple thoughts just overall. I did some canvassing with Lowell Votes, and there were some keys to the numbers So we need to take into consideration that the districts are created by census numbers. So that is every human who lives in that district, whatever their age. So we really have to distill down how many actual eligible voters are in each district. And because that is not how the districts are coordinated, there is inevitably an imbalance. We also have to take into account the acre and Centerville has an extremely high number of refugees, asylees who cannot vote. That's the long and short of it. My neighborhood has all kids in it. Like they can't vote. So when we conflate the percentages of people of voting in each district with the population, it's apples and oranges. So we have to really distill down like what percentages of the population are actually able to vote and all of those things to get sort of into the nitty gritty weeds of it. So yes, registering people is really important. Another piece is the city epically failed with inactive voters. There was an epic computer failure. Part of that was the state, part of that was the city. There is research that mail in or mailed ballots, to everybody's houses. There is statistics that will help, but the problem is the way that those are worded. Just the word perjury, because like if you sign it in the wrong place, it says, perjury under law. That scares people. So there's some people that refuse to do it because they don't know how. So I know that there is works and talks about doing videos that demonstrate how to fill those out in different languages, and we're hoping that that will help and kind of calm people down and be like, it's a scary word and this is what it means, but so those are just some pieces to think about. I know this can get kind of tricky when we try to figure out registering voters and being for Solidarity Lowell, we're partisan and everything else is nonpartisan. And I did struggle with that this year because it was like, where's the most effort, and what do we need to put the most effort into? And personally, my personal opinion is that if people don't understand the system, like that's a bigger issue with the city in general of like, where can they get that information? And we need to empower our citizens to do things on their own. Like we can't rely on nonprofits or us or anybody else to do everything. Like at some point, like to Ron's point, like there's this voter malaise and it's a general like societal malaise. And I think that like what Dee is saying about how we really have to get our butt in gear because we need to really push against that. And how we do it, I have no idea, but it definitely needs to happen. And I'm happy that we're having this discussion so early. We're just kind of, being so honest about it. And I do know that the elections commission within the city of Lowell is not as supportive of efforts in general. So, if Solidarity Lowell wanted to put together something, one of the pieces would be to start talking about how they need to do better advertising and talk about increasing their budget.
Point of clarification, when we talk about percentage voting, it's not out of the general population. That's the percentage voting of registered voters. So all of the numbers that you see in these reports, that's based on registered voters, not the general population. If we want to get into what percentage of the voting eligible populace are actually registered voters, that's a completely different data dive. And I don't have access to that data yet because the Secretary of State's office doesn't have it. I want to get it, but I don't want you to get confused and think that the 6.34% for the acre is 6.34% of the population voted. That's 6.34% of registered voters voted.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say thank you for that clarification. I was more relating to how the map was made.
Yeah, I have a sort of different approach to this. There wasn't
a lot of good reasons to vote this election, in my opinion. In fact, there were very few. And if I wasn't kind of fascinated by local politics and an activist and somebody who goes and speaks in front of city council every now and then, and just like all y'all, I wouldn't have paid any mind to it. There were, most of the elections, most of the seats were uncontested. You could advertise, you could hire, you know, the people that advertise for beer and everything else to do the ads. If there's one candidate, they're not gonna come out. And if they do come out, what is that even telling you? Okay. Number two, where there was a contest, and I canvassed a lot, so I'm not saying it didn't matter to me. But honestly, between us, you know, I would have a hard time. I mean, I know what I said on behalf of Vestman when I canvassed for him, and I'm really glad he won, and I spent a lot of freaking Saturdays doing it. And I think he's a good counselor, and he's happened to be the person I was working for. And I didn't have to work for him, I just wanted to. But if you abstract from your own sort of personal involvement, take a look at it, the differences between the candidates were not huge, okay? The issues that the city council spent all freaking year arguing with each other about, like ADUs, were not that important to very many people. They were important to me. I talked to people about them, but the need to do something about affordable housing is very important. What difference ADU would have made to affordable housing just between us? The right wing was correct, not much, okay? Doesn't mean they shouldn't have passed it. I think they should have passed it. But there's just not a lot out there to get somebody up to vote. The candidates, I was in one of the very few districts where my vote actually might have made a difference in Stacey Thompson district.
Mhm.
I never saw Stacey Thompson once during the whole campaign, anywhere. Okay, now, not home, well, I work from home now, actually, I am home more than I used to be. And I didn't see the first Stacey Thompson sign I saw was at Solidarity Lowell's sign holding thing, remember when we did the sign holding?
Yeah.
Which was like 2 nights before the election or something?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
No visibility.
Yeah, she didn't work at it, at least if she did, maybe it's, you know, maybe this is just anecdotal, maybe.
I heard that something was up with her campaign manager, but I don't know for sure.
Maybe I'm an outlier, maybe everybody else seen it, I live on the edge of Pawtuckaville, I don't drive through Pawtuckaville, but, and you might know, but, you know, I don't think she campaigned very hard. And as other candidates came to our door, she didn't come to our door, and like I said, so I think if we really want to improve turnout, we should be working, and I know that some of you are working on this, so we should be working really hard on finding a true progressive candidate that could really speak to the real issues. We're handicapped by the fact that there's not much cities and towns can actually do about our problems. We get very involved in local politics because we live here and want to get involved, and it's easier than getting involved in state politics. But city and town government is limited in what they can do. Very limited in what revenue can be raised because of Massachusetts laws. You want to solve the housing crisis, we need to go to the state house. You want to solve a climate crisis, we need to go to the UN or the federal government and the state house. So I think anyway, so there's a number of reasons there. I think some people accurately recognize that city government doesn't matter that much. That said, there are things it can do. We live here, we got to do what we can. And I think I'm not against what Lowell Votes is doing, but we need a real progressive candidate to speak to people about issues and take it seriously enough to knock on the doors and do all that stuff. And we should find more, and other cities and towns find them. Worcester had higher turnout than we did. They had more races. And the final point I'll make, which I kind of like the Plan E government, because I think it gives us, it's not all riding on who the mayor is, you know? You can find somebody you can to advocate and bring things up. But, if we really want to get more turnout, you have a strong mayor, get more turnout, people will vote for a mayor, they understand mayor, you're voting for one of 11 people. Or maybe 4 of 11 people now. Anyway, but when you vote, you have no idea who they're gonna pick. Well, the mayor doesn't matter in Lowell, but what I mean is, well, that's my opinion, I know that may be. Use it as a tool. That's another subject, some people wanna make a big issue about the fact that we should be electing our mayor. But the mayor is a ceremonial position, I mean, really. Which isn't to say we shouldn't be electing him, but anyhow, I think there are a lot of reasons that are structural, and the solution, we should all be educating people, but I think if we had to pick one thing, it would be to find a decent candidate.
Mitch then Ron, I mean,
Okay, I mean, one concern I know that I've heard from people, was that, well, the district, you know, the new district-based system was very successful in its original goal of making sure that there are people elected from across the city. Because originally, you know, we had a very recent memory, the city election, which the entire city council was elected from Belvedere. So in that respect, it was very successful. In the way the districts were structured in particular, once those seats were no longer open seats and became occupied, it creates a situation in which it's very hard to run against the incumbents. Having a single just seat per district and having 3 seats, you know, at large, makes it so that you have a lot of personal brand wrapped up in each of the districts, and that's very hard to beat. You know, it really personalizes the races in a way the 9-seat open at large race did not. And that was probably one of the reasons why we did not see some seats contested this year. You weren't just running to run. If you were running in most of the races, you were running against somebody who was the face of that seat. So I mean, my own idea is in favor. I mean, Worcester, for example, has 5 at-large seats instead of 3. Then they have 4 single-member districts. I know one other thing that helped Worcester this year was that they had a state senate seat, special election.
And a contested mayor's race.
They had, yeah, I mean, they also have a ceremonial there, but they're really selected. One of Worcester's state senate seats was up for election this year, because you know, which Peter Durant unfortunately won that. So, like, those are a couple of differences, and I don't know exactly what the resolution for this is, but I do think that like I said, while the district system achieved its goal, you know, it has side effects on the competitiveness of the races that are going to probably have to get addressed in some way.
So you mentioned that Stacy's campaign was kind of underwhelming. I'm curious, did you find Susan's campaign equally underwhelming?
I don't live in South Lowell, I don't know, I mean, I honestly, I mean.
Open to the floor, did people?
I'll talk about it in a minute.
Cause I'm curious if people thought Susie ran a good campaign or not, cause.
Yeah, Marissa could tell us.
Yeah, I mean, we're being recorded, so I'm gonna be polite, but I think there are things that could have been done better. And I was really disappointed with her campaign manager because, I mean, she was pregnant, Susie knew that, but she, you know, the timing for when she had the baby was awful. It was, you know, like a month and a half before the election. So Susie was basically campaign manager free, you know, and she had some other people who were helping her, you know, but I don't think her campaign manager did a fantastic job. And I don't know, it was disappointing. I mean,
Turnout in Susie's district was lower than in Stacy's district, and Susie got beaten by a worse margin than Stacy did. So the reason I was asking that question was to see whether we were finding something systemic. It certainly sounds like we are.
well, and South Lowell is kind of weird because there is like, you know, a small section, you know, near the Highlands that's a lot of Cambodian folks. And then, you know, I have, like, my street is all Dominican, and then there's, you know, obviously a lot of white people, so it's a weird district, you know, it's.
And her opponent was relatively popular.
Well, her opponent is very plugged in with their pitcher's family,
Yeah.
so, and his son actually campaigned for her.
Did you say what you wanted to say?
Yeah, I
Okay.
asked a question, that's all I wanted.
Yeah, so, no, I forgot what I was, oh, yeah, so one of the ideas that a friend of mine threw out was trying to move the elections to an even year. Moving, you know, the city council and school committee, elections to it, you know, because then everybody's coming out to vote, you know, they're at the same time, and then they're sort of forced to deal with this. But the argument against that is that, well, then the ballot's gonna be huge.
And 3 languages.
Yeah, and 3 languages and which should be many more.
Yeah.
And also, like, they have to learn about all of these people instead of just the, you know, 2 that they needed to before. But I don't know, I mean, I think that's an interesting tactic, but my perspective is, as a former campaign manager, I was really disappointed with the campaign managers for a lot of these candidates. And it made me almost disappointed that I had to sit this one out because, you know, I just got a new job and I didn't think I could handle it. So I told my boss I wouldn't. But I mean, the thing is that, like, you know, I've talked to different candidates and it's like, they're like, oh yeah, you know, whatever, and they weren't knocking doors. It's like, this is, and I know that Lisa didn't when I ran her campaign, but it was the pandemic and we didn't know what to do. But that's the most important thing. Like, you have to knock doors. You're supposed to hit each house 3 times. And a lot of these people didn't even hit each house. So that's really disappointing to me. And like, I know a lot of the candidates, you know, they have jobs and it's really difficult, but it's like, this is what goes into it. This is what you have to do. And yes, it's hard. It's really hard. But I don't know, if you don't have a campaign manager behind you who's really pushing and telling you, you got to go to this event, you got to knock these doors, you know, it's much harder.
I agree with you because I volunteered for a couple of campaigns and ran into frustrations getting assignments because I cannot knock doors. And then the scripts sometimes they didn't account for things that should have been accounted for, like ADUs.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. I think, going back, I tried to raise my hand before, but I didn't get seen. I'm sorry. The mail-in ballot, so the drop box. The drop box was hidden. It was in the police department because it's been broken for 2 years.
Yeah, and
wasn't fixed in time. So that's
Intimidating location.
So people are saying we need more drop boxes than one anyhow. I went down to City Hall and I took my mail-in ballot into the election department during the day because I didn't know where the damn drop box was and there were no signs. And people who went there and went looking for it where it always was, it never would have occurred to them to go to the police department. Yeah, so that's another piece of it. One of the things I think activists could consider is developing issues that could be brought to city council, so they get people interested first. Then we get some city councilors lined up. Then we bring it so it's on the agenda and we get people to speak, because the more we get people involved in things like that, the more we have some motivation for them participating in the voting too. They see that they can make a difference. Right now, a lot of people feel like, what's the point? We had a vote where the 70+% of the population said, we want to elect the mayor, and heard crickets afterwards. So why would they vote when it's like, whatever we say doesn't matter? So I think developing issues that we can bring and maybe see some action on might work.
Yeah. In terms of candidates, does anyone have any ideas?
I don't think candidates are the issue. I think the issue is getting more people registered and tracking who gets registered. Because that's what the voting list is, and candidates look at that, they don't waste their time on doors that have no voters behind it.
Yeah.
Right, which is, so, if we were to start, registering 100 or 200 per election, we'd be building up a database of folks that we brought into the system, and then you almost gotta drag them out on election day.
Yeah.
But that means a lot of background research, and that's why Dee's point about starting January,
Yeah.
get going early.
John, you're good, Ron?
So I have a suggestion. The point of me bringing this up was not that we would suddenly become superheroes and do all this living ourselves. What I want to see happen is for all the activist groups to start working together on these issues, because we all want the same candidates to get elected. We have pretty much exactly the same legislative slate that we want to see passed. If we don't get the candidates that are going to support that legislative slate elected, we're never going to get that legislative slate. So we have a common interest with all these other groups. We can divvy up the work amongst us. And frankly, I think if we start to cooperate with each other, we may actually be able to convince somebody to become a candidate when they know that there's an entire city of activists that are working together to help get people elected, rather than the three dogs in a trench coat. 60
Cats, or
different
cats,
versions.
Ron.
Three cats. Okay, I'm sorry. Cats, dogs, owls.
Owls is fine. No, what I was just gonna say is, the tricky thing is that, Lowell votes, MAA, those types of groups, they're all 501c3s, which means they can't endorse, and it's really tricky that they're involved with groups that do endorse like us. So basically, we're left with us and Llama. And Llama has a lot of differing issues with a lot of the candidates. I was looking at one of the Lowell meme groups, who I'm pretty sure is a member of Llama, posted something like, oh, this, like Wayne's okay, Vesna, I don't know. I'm like, how do you not know that Vesna's good? So it's stuff like that. Like, it might seem like we all want the same candidates, but they're not paying as much attention as we are to like city council meetings and stuff. Ron?
So I tried really hard on my Facebook page not to make a big thing out of a lot of Native American stuff. When I walk into a room full of women who are doing Planned Parenthood, I'm very quiet. When I walk into a room full of Black Lives Matter, I'm very quiet. When I walk in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's times when I'm an ally and I'm in somebody else's house. And so, yeah, we're going to work with Lowell Votes. We're going to work with the Acre. And they're going to have some differences than us.
We're just gonna have to clear that up ahead of time.
Yeah, but I think you can do it.
Yeah,
I think
no, I'm not saying we
absolutely.
can't. I'm just saying it's strict.
But I think that point you made about the 501c3 is really important. In other words, we can all work together on the kind of stuff Lowell Votes does, and that we've been talking about, which we should. I agree with this people. But the other approach to it, identifying campaign managers and a system to get behind people, finding a good candidate, developing issues to be brought up. Those groups are limited in their ability to do that by virtue of being 501c3s. They can work on issues, they can't work on candidates. So.
And they can't fundraise.
And we're also a 501c3.
No, we're not.
I'm saying
Chris S is,
Yeah, right.
but
They
we're
can-
not.
They can work on
issues.
like these suggestions. If we wanted
Ballot questions, everything.
come up with a progressive agenda for the city, they could work on that. But if we want to talk about how to get candidates elected and finding them, they couldn't work on that.
There are groups that do that, though. There are a number of groups that focus just on having people run for office. They're more national, but they have procedures for doing that.
Oh, there's like Mass Alliance.
Mass Alliance,
Yeah,
that
Mass
provides
Alliance.
tools for running for office, but the actual political act of getting a group of people together and say, when we're not being recorded, let's find, who would be a good candidate? And what issues should we use to find a candidate, and that kind of true political work.
nonprofits can't do it. If maybe someone who works in a nonprofit can do it on their off time, but they can't do it.
Yeah, they can talk about the issues, they just can't promote the candidate.
Unless they have a C4 arm.
But 350.
Which Progressive Mass does, which is why we're allowed.
350 Mass has a C4 arm,
Yeah.
that's different. I don't think Coalition for a Better Acre does.
No, they don't.
CMEA.
No.
But I think that's just icing on a cake. Go ahead,
But that's
sorry.
something that groups like us can do.
Right.
We could organize a meeting where people learn about what kind of progressive candidates we're looking for and try to get people to run. Tell them what's involved. Help. So your average person who's sitting out there and is frustrated with city government, it never occurs to them that they could possibly be running. It's like, it's a whole different world. And sometimes it's easier than they think it is. I get there's all the fundraising and all that stuff, but they need to understand there are ways to deal with that, and they don't, because they don't have those connections.
Caroline's next.
So, Lowell Votes actually does have a program that does this. Yes, it's not progressive, it is nonpartisan. But it is called the CERT program, and there are many people who have run within this election and the previous election that have actually gone through that. And so my suggestion is, again, we work with Lowell Votes, Lowell Alliance, all of those groups, and look at what they do and add to what they do, because they'll give us that foundation, and then we can add the progressive piece to it afterwards, almost as like a part 2. But that's also part of, like we're getting stuck on the partisan nonpartisan thing, and I understand that that's important, but it's right now, since we're not actively in a campaign quote unquote season yet, this is when we need to start figuring these things out and say, what can we do together, and then where do we need to split? So I mean, I managed to be partisan and nonpartisan for this election, so it's finicky, but it's doable. And so I think that what Ron was saying, and we've all been echoing, is that it is really important, and it gets down to the fact that we need to get people on the ballot, but more importantly, we need to get them out and voting.
After the last city council meeting where, Wayne Jeunesse had the motion about looking into how to improve voting in the city, there was a conversation in the hall among the various groups, including Lowell Votes, about a possible summit of different people talking about exactly that kind of thing, bring people together and figure out how to proceed with what needs to be done, because it can't stay the way it is. John?
And I have to go, so I'll make one more point, which is, one of the things that Lowell is lacking, despite the best efforts on right here on my right, is an active, community-based organization that doesn't have a service-oriented agenda the way CMAA and CBA and the other ones do. And the Merrimack Valley Project could become that, and it has been in the past, but it's sort of in a down place now here in Lowell, and I know that people here are getting involved to make it happen. And I think that would go a ways towards solving some of these problems we're talking about. Getting more people involved, having them see that they can become empowered and make a difference, that there is a way to impact what happens in the city if they get involved in a neighborhood organization that's fighting for something that doesn't have some other agenda and can actually take on the powers that be, because they're not depending upon them for funding. So another way to help with this effort is to help Marlon and listen is rebuild the MVP.
We're on it. All right, we're at 7 o'clock, so we'll start wrapping up. Our next meeting will be our annual holiday party, which will be Saturday. It's not so much a meeting as a party. Saturday, December 16th from 3 to 8 p.m. at my house. And please sign up for the potluck. The link is on the screen, and we'll be sending that out in the rapid response update.
Can I bring games?
Yes. I also have many games. And you can join us online, join us on our Facebook page, which is where you'll see public events, photos, and more, but you won't see discussions or members only events. But if you join the Facebook group, you can participate in discussion, access all of our events, including members only, like the holiday party. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And yes, I'm still calling it Twitter because Elon Musk sucks.
Yes. Seconded.
Thank you so much for attending and have a great evening.
Good night, all. Thanks.
Thanks, Carolyn. Just out of curiosity, how many people besides Carolyn do we have actually watching us online?